The Great Hall of the Galactic Union was silent. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in their seats, watching the large screen at the center of the room. Ambassador Talon of the Varic Dominion stood at the speaking platform, his 4 eyes moving slowly across the crowd. "We have watched the humans for 30 years, Tolan said. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the worry in it. "We have studied their armies. We have observed their battles. And I must tell you all something important." He pressed a button, and the screen showed images of human soldiers. They were marching across a desert planet, their weapons ready, their faces hard and focused. "Earth's regular army is unlike anything we have seen before," Tolan continued. "In our culture, when an army loses 40% of its soldiers in battle, they retreat. This is logical. This is how war works. But humans—" He paused and shook his head slowly. "Humans continue fighting even when they have lost 70%. Sometimes more." A sound of shock moved through the crowd. Several ambassadors began talking to each other in worried voices. "How is this possible?" asked Representative Morik from the Keldath Federation. "No species can maintain combat effectiveness with such losses. The psychological damage alone would break any army." Tolan looked at him with tired eyes. "We do not know how they do it. We only know that they do." In the back of the hall, Fleet Commander Boran sat very still. He was old now, his gray skin marked with scars from many battles. But when he thought about the humans, his hands began to shake. 3 years ago, Boran had commanded an army of 5,000 Varic soldiers on the border world of Kesh 4. It was supposed to be a simple mission. The humans had only 1 armored division there, maybe 800 soldiers at most. The battle lasted 6 days. On the first day, Boran's forces had pushed the humans back. He had felt confident. His soldiers were well trained and well equipped. Victory seemed certain. On the second day, the humans stopped retreating. They dug into the hills and began fighting back with terrible efficiency. Boran lost 300 soldiers in a single hour. By the 4th day, Boran realized something was wrong. His soldiers were afraid. Not just careful, not just cautious, but truly afraid. They did not want to advance. They did not want to fight. They wanted to run. The humans never stopped. They attacked at night. They attacked at dawn. They attacked during the hottest part of the day, when Varic soldiers could barely function. They seemed to need no rest, no food, no water. They just kept coming. On the 6th day, Boran ordered a full retreat. He had lost over 2,000 soldiers. The humans had lost perhaps 200. In his official report, Boran had written words that would become famous throughout the Union. "They do not stop, even when they should, even when logic demands retreat. They do not stop." Now, sitting in the Union Hall, Boran listened to Tolan speak and felt that old fear returning. Far away, on the planet Earth, Colonel Park Deho sat in his office at the United Nations Space Command headquarters in Seoul. Rain fell outside his window, making soft sounds against the glass. He was reading intelligence reports, his face serious and thoughtful. The door opened, and Lieutenant Yoon Hana walked in. She was young, smart, and one of the best analysts in the service. She carried a tablet filled with new information. "The latest reports from our observation posts, sir," she said, placing the tablet on his desk. Deho picked it up and began reading. His eyes moved quickly across the screen, taking in every detail. After several minutes, he set the tablet down and leaned back in his chair. "They are afraid of us," he said quietly. Hana nodded. "Yes, sir. The Varic, the Keldath, the Morin Collective, they have all increased their defensive spending by at least 30% in the last 2 years. Their military academies now include special courses on human combat tactics." "Good," Deho said. "Fear keeps them cautious. Fear prevents war." But then his expression changed. His eyes grew darker, more worried. "However," he continued, "fear also makes people desperate. When you fear something, you study it. You learn its patterns. You search for its weaknesses." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rain-covered city. Millions of people lived their lives below, unaware of the dangers gathering in the darkness of space. And eventually, Deho said, you find something, some weakness, some opportunity, some way to tip the balance in your favor. Hana felt a cold feeling in her stomach. Sir? Do you think they are planning something? Deho was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to face her. The Varric have been testing our defenses for years. Small attacks. Border incidents. Probing actions. He walked back to his desk and pulled up a star map on his computer. But recently, their pattern has changed. They have been gathering intelligence on our colony worlds, particularly the newer ones. The smaller ones. He pointed to a planet on the edge of human space. It was called New Busan, named after the Korean city where many of its original settlers had come from. This world has a population of 2 million, Deho said. It has rich mineral deposits and sits at a strategic point between our space and Varric territory. It is defended by only 2,000 regular army soldiers and outdated equipment. Hana understood immediately. They are going to attack it. I believe so, Deho said. And I believe they will attack soon. He sat down and began typing rapidly on his keyboard. Messages flew out to observation posts, intelligence agencies, and military commanders across human space. We must be ready, he said. If the Varric take New Busan, it will show the entire galaxy that humans can be defeated. Other species will grow bold. More attacks will follow. What do we do, sir? Deho looked at her with steady eyes. We prepare, we watch, and when the attack comes, we respond with everything we have. 3 light-years away, in the darkness of space, Varric High Command was indeed planning. General Morthak stood before a massive holographic display of New Busan, studying every mountain, every valley, every city. The humans think they are strong, Morthak said to his officers. They think their reputation will protect them. But reputation is nothing against proper planning and overwhelming force. He pointed to the planet's 3 major cities. We will strike all 3 at once. 40,000 soldiers. 12 assault carriers. Complete air superiority. The colonial defense force will be destroyed within hours. One of his officers raised a hand. General, if we attack a human colony, they will send reinforcements. Their main fleet could arrive within weeks. Morthak smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Yes, he said. They will send their precious regular army, their famous soldiers who never surrender. He turned to face the hologram, his eyes gleaming with confidence. And we will be ready for them. We will dig in, fortify our positions, and bleed them white when they try to take the planet back. This will be the battle that breaks humanity's spirit, he continued. When the galaxy sees that humans can lose, that humans can be defeated, everything will change. The fear will disappear, and the Varric Dominion will lead the way into a new era. His officers cheered. Ships began moving into position. Soldiers prepared their weapons and equipment. The invasion of New Busan was about to begin, and none of them, not a single Varric soldier or commander, had any idea what was waiting for them. They knew about Earth's armies. They knew about Earth's fleets. They knew about Earth's famous regular soldiers who fought beyond all reason. But they did not know about the others. The quiet ones. The ones who did not appear in intelligence reports or battle footage. The ones who operated in shadows and silence. They did not know about Earth's special forces, and that lack of knowledge was about to cost them everything. The attack came at 0347 local time, when most of New Busan was still sleeping. Governor Baek Sun-hee was in her residence when the first explosions shook the city. She jumped out of bed and ran to her window. The sky was on fire. Dozens of bright lights were falling through the clouds, and she knew immediately what they were. Varric assault carriers. The invasion had begun. Within minutes, she was in her command center, surrounded by screens showing chaos across the planet. Her military advisors were shouting into communication devices, trying to coordinate a defense that was already falling apart. How many? Sun-hee demanded. 12 carriers, ma'am, answered Colonel Ryu Ji-hoon, the commander of the Colonial Defense Force. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. We estimate 40,000 ground troops. They are landing in all three major cities simultaneously. Soon he felt her heart sink. 2,000 defenders against 40,000 attackers. The math was simple and terrible. We cannot win a direct fight, she said. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Get the civilians into the underground bunkers. Priority to children, elderly, and medical facilities. Yes, ma'am. The next few hours were a nightmare. Varric soldiers poured into the cities like water through broken walls. The Colonial Defense Force fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed at every point. Buildings burned, streets filled with smoke and the sounds of weapons fire. Colonel Ryu fell defending a hospital, giving time for nurses to evacuate patients into the tunnels below. His last words, recorded by a security camera, were simple. Keep fighting. Help is coming. By dawn, the three cities were in Varric hands. But the civilians, most of them at least, were safe in the bunker network that ran beneath the planet's surface. Old mining tunnels, expanded and reinforced over decades, now protected almost 2 million people. Soon he had made it to Bunker 7, the largest and most secure facility in the network. From there, she broadcast a message to Earth, hoping the Varric had not yet blocked all communication channels. This is Governor Baek Sunhee of New Busan, she said, her voice tired but firm. We are under attack. Varric forces have occupied our major cities. Our defense force has been destroyed. We request immediate assistance. Repeat. We request immediate assistance. The message went out. Then the jamming started, and New Busan went silent. General Morthak established his headquarters in the captured Capitol building. He sat in Governor Baek's own office, looking out at the city he now controlled. Smoke rose from several areas where fighting had continued longer than expected, but overall, the invasion had gone according to plan. Casualties? He asked his aide. 3,247, General. Higher than projected, but acceptable. Morthak nodded. The humans had fought hard. As expected. Their soldiers had not surrendered even when surrounded. Even when defeat was certain. Several small units had held their positions until the last man fell. Fascinating creatures, Morthak murmured. Brave. Certainly. But bravery alone does not win wars. He turned to his tactical officer. Begin fortification of all positions. The human fleet will come. We must be ready. Yes, General. Also, sir, we are detecting scattered resistance throughout the civilian population. Small groups causing minor problems. Sabotage, mostly. Expected, Morthak said. Send patrols. Maintain order. But do not waste too many resources on them. The real threat will come from space. For 3 days, the Varric worked to secure their conquest. They repaired damaged infrastructure, established supply lines, and built defensive positions around all major strategic points. Everything was going exactly as planned. Then, on the 4th day, something unexpected happened. General, the communications officer said, his voice uncertain. We are detecting a single, small vessel approaching the planet. Morthak looked up from his reports. Details. Human origin, sir. No escort. No support ships. It appears to be a light transport. Maximum capacity of perhaps 30 personnel. The general was confused. This made no sense. Humans were many things, but they were not stupid. Sending one small ship against an occupation force of 40,000 was suicide. A scout? He wondered aloud. Possibly, sir. Should we destroy it? Morthak thought for a moment. A scout would have useful information about human plans. If they captured it intact, they could learn valuable intelligence about the coming counterattack. No, he decided. Let them land, then send a force to capture them. Yes, General. Where is the ship landing? Track it. Send a company to intercept. 200 soldiers should be more than enough. The small transport ship landed in a mountain valley, 60 kilometers from the nearest Varric position. Sensors showed exactly 24 humans, exiting the ship and moving into the surrounding forest. 24 humans, 200 Varric soldiers. "This will be over quickly," said Captain Thalok, commanding the intercept company. His soldiers moved through the forest in standard formation, weapons ready, confident in their numbers and training. They found the landing site easily. The human ship sat empty in a small clearing. Boot prints led into the trees in multiple directions. "They have scattered," Thalok reported to headquarters. "We will hunt them down. This may take some time." "Understood," came the reply. "Capture as many as possible. Kill the rest." Thalok divided his company into 10 squads of 20 soldiers each. They spread out through the forest, following the tracks, searching for their prey. The first squad disappeared within the hour. They simply stopped responding to radio calls. Captain Thalok sent another squad to find them. That squad also went silent. By nightfall, Thalok had lost 60 soldiers. He had not seen a single human. He had not heard a single shot. His men were simply vanishing into the forest. "Fall back," he ordered his remaining troops. "Defensive formation. Wait for reinforcements." The survivors gathered in the original landing clearing, their backs to each other, their weapons pointed outward at the dark trees. Fear was thick in the air. These were experienced soldiers, veterans of border conflicts, but they had never encountered anything like this. "What are they?" whispered one young soldier. "How are they doing this?" No one had an answer. Captain Thalok tried to contact headquarters, but his radio was dead. Something was jamming local communications. They were alone. The attack came at midnight. It lasted exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. When Varric search teams found the clearing the next morning, they discovered 200 bodies arranged in neat rows. Every soldier had been killed with precise efficiency. Some had wounds from knives, some from garrotes. Some had simply had their necks broken. Not a single human body was found. Captain Thalok's body was positioned at the center of the clearing. A small note was attached to his armor. It contained a single sentence in Varric language. "We are just getting started." General Morthak read the report in silence. His hands were trembling slightly, though he tried to hide it from his officers. "What happened?" he demanded. "How did 24 humans destroy 200 of our soldiers?" No one had an answer. "Sir," said his intelligence officer carefully, "we have analyzed the sensor data from the battle. Or rather, we have tried to analyze it. The humans appear to have disabled or avoided every sensor we deployed. We have almost no information about how they accomplished this. That is impossible. We had full coverage of that area." "I know, sir, and yet, we have nothing." Morthak stood up and walked to the window. Outside, his soldiers were patrolling the streets, maintaining order, following their routines. Everything looked normal. Everything looked controlled. But somewhere out there, in the mountains and forests of New Busan, 24 humans were waiting, planning, preparing, and for the first time since the invasion began, General Morthak felt something cold settle into his stomach. It was fear. He had studied human armies for years. He knew their tactics, their equipment, their doctrine. He knew about their famous determination and their refusal to surrender. But these humans were different. These humans did not fight like any army he had ever encountered. They did not hold territory. They did not seek battle. They simply appeared, killed, vanished, like ghosts. "Increase patrols," he ordered. "Double all guard posts. No soldier moves alone. I want constant communication checks every 15 minutes. "Yes, General." "But sir, what exactly are we dealing with here?" Morthak was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know," he finally admitted. "But I intend to find out, before it is too late." In the mountains, Captain Shin Tae-woo watched the Varric headquarters through his binoculars. His team was gathered around him, resting but alert, already planning their next move. "Phase 1 complete," Tae-woo said quietly. "They know we are here. Now we make them afraid to sleep." His soldiers smiled. They had trained their entire lives for moments like this. 24 against 40,000. Impossible odds by any normal calculation, but they were not normal soldiers. They were special forces, and the real work was just beginning. Captain Shin Tae-woo gathered his team in a shallow cave as cold rain fell outside. The cave was small and uncomfortable, but it was hidden from Varric sensors, and that was all that mattered. 24 operators sat in the darkness, eating cold rations and checking their equipment. 3 squads of 8, each one capable of incredible destruction. They were tired but focused, their eyes sharp and ready. "All right," Taewoo said, spreading a holographic map across the cave floor. The soft blue light illuminated their faces. Phase 1 was successful. The enemy knows we are here. They are scared. Now we begin Phase 2. He pointed to various locations on the map. Local resistance forces are scattered but not broken. Governor Baek Sunhee is alive and coordinating civilian efforts from Bunker 7. Our primary objectives are as follows. Sergeant First Class Kim Mireille, the team's senior non-commissioned officer, leaned forward to study the map. She was small but incredibly strong, with quick hands and quicker instincts. In 12 years of service, she had never failed a mission. First objective, Taewoo continued. Communications. The Varric have jammed everything above ground, but there are hardline relays throughout the old mining tunnels. Yoon, your squad takes that. Get us connected to the civilian resistance and to Earth Command. Staff Sergeant Yoon Jisoo nodded. He was the team's technical specialist, capable of building a radio from scrap metal and broken electronics. Second objective, command disruption. I want their officers afraid to close their eyes. Han, that is your squad. Make every Varric commander feel like a target. Master Sergeant Han Dongwoo smiled slightly. His squad specialized in what the military called direct action. In simpler words, they were assassins. Third objective, and this is the important one, Taewoo said. We need to make them believe there are many more of us than there actually are. We hit them everywhere. We hit them constantly. We make 40,000 soldiers afraid of 24. Someone in the back made a small sound of amusement. So, we are outnumbered, about 1,800 to 1, sir. Yes, Taewoo said. So it is finally a fair fight. Quiet laughter moved through the group. These were soldiers who had trained for years to operate behind enemy lines, outnumbered and outgunned. This was what they lived for. Move out in 1 hour, Taewoo ordered. Radio silence unless absolutely necessary. Trust your training, trust each other. And remember, the enemy fears what they do not understand. Let us give them something to truly fear. Over the next 72 hours, the Varric occupation force began to fall apart. It started with small things. A supply convoy would leave one city and never arrive at its destination. Guards would report strange sounds at night but find nothing when they investigated. Equipment would malfunction for no apparent reason. Then the bigger things began. On the second night, Major Vornak, the Varric officer in charge of the Eastern District, was found dead in his quarters. The door had been locked from the inside. The windows were sealed. There was no sign of forced entry. But somehow, a human had gotten in, killed him silently, and disappeared. The investigation found nothing useful. No fingerprints, no DNA, no evidence of any kind. Just a dead officer and a room full of terrified soldiers who had been standing guard outside. The next morning, 3 fuel depots exploded in 3 different cities at exactly the same time. Thousands of liters of vehicle fuel burned. Smoke covered the sky for hours. On the 4th night, an entire guard post simply stopped reporting. When reinforcements arrived, they found 20 Varric soldiers dead at their positions. Their weapons had not been fired. Their radios had not been used. Whatever killed them had been too fast for any of them to even react. General Morthak demanded answers. His intelligence officers had none to give. We have recovered some bodies from the first ambush, one officer reported nervously. 3 soldiers from the company we sent to intercept the human ship. They were found arranged in a triangle, positioned to be visible from our aerial surveillance. Arranged? Morthak repeated, his voice dangerous. Yes, General. We believe it was intended as a message. What kind of message? The officer hesitated. We believe they are showing us that they can do whatever they want, that they have complete control. Morthak slammed his fist on his desk. We have 40,000 soldiers. They have 24. How is this possible? No one answered. Meanwhile, in the darkness beneath the cities, Yoon Ji-soo and his squad had found the old hardline communication relays. The tunnels were cold and damp, filled with ancient mining equipment and forgotten machinery. But the communication lines were still functional. Ji-soo worked quickly, connecting his portable equipment to the relay system. Within hours, he had established contact with Governor Baek in Bunker 7. "This is Staff Sergeant Yoon of Earth Special Operations Command," he said into his radio. "Governor Baek, do you read?" There was a moment of static. Then a woman's voice came through. "I read you, Sergeant. This is Governor Baek. I was starting to think we were completely alone." R. Negative, ma'am. Help is here. We need to coordinate with your civilian resistance. Can you tell me what resources you have?" The governor's voice grew stronger, more confident. "We have thousands of people in these bunkers, Sergeant. Many of them were soldiers before they became colonists. They know this planet. They know every tunnel, every hidden path, every place to hide. Tell us what you need." Jisoo smiled in the darkness. "Ma'am, we need eyes and ears. We need people who can watch the enemy and report their movements. We need guides who can show us the best ways to move without being seen. We can do that. And we need people who are willing to fight. Not directly, not yet. But small actions. Sabotage. Disruption. Making the enemy uncomfortable wherever they go." There was a pause on the other end. Then Baek's voice came back, harder than before. "Sergeant, these invaders killed my friends. They destroyed our homes. They think they have conquered us." Her voice grew cold. "Tell us exactly what to do, and we will make them regret ever coming to our world." Within days, the civilian resistance had become a force that General Morthak had never anticipated. Humans who had seemed harmless suddenly became intelligence gatherers and saboteurs. A Varric patrol would enter a small town and find it apparently empty. They would search the buildings, find nothing, and report the area secure. Hours later, 3 of their soldiers would be dead, and the survivors would have no idea how it had happened. Food supplies were poisoned. Vehicle parts went missing. Maps and documents disappeared from secure locations. Every time the Varric tried to do anything, something went wrong. And behind it all, Captain Shin Tae-woo and his team moved like shadows. They never attacked the same way twice. They never appeared where the enemy expected. They struck at night, at dawn, during storms, during the hottest part of the day. They killed officers and enlisted soldiers alike, always choosing targets that would cause maximum confusion and fear. Master Sergeant Han Dong-woo and his squad became particularly feared. They specialized in impossible kills. Officers who should have been completely protected would simply die. Locked doors, armed guards, security systems, nothing seemed to stop them. One Varric colonel woke up in the middle of the night to find a human soldier standing at the foot of his bed. The human looked at him for a long moment, then simply walked out of the room. The colonel was not killed. He was left alive specifically so he could tell others what had happened. The psychological effect was devastating. By the end of the first week, Varric soldiers were refusing to go on patrol. Officers were sleeping in armored vehicles because they were afraid to be alone in buildings. Desertions had begun, with soldiers trying to reach the ships in orbit and escape from this nightmare planet. Communications intercepts revealed the depth of their fear. Soldiers were calling their families, saying goodbye, convinced they were going to die. Officers were begging headquarters for reinforcement or permission to retreat. General Morthak tried to maintain control, but his authority was slipping. His soldiers no longer trusted that he could protect them. His officers no longer believed that victory was possible. On the 8th day, he received a report that made his blood run cold. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "we have confirmed that the enemy is working with the civilian population. They are everywhere. In the towns, in the tunnels, in the forests. We cannot move without being watched. We cannot plan without being anticipated." Morthak stared at the report for a long time. 24 soldiers. Just 24. and they had turned his entire occupation force into targets. He had thought he understood human warfare. He had studied their armies, their tactics, their history. He had prepared for their famous determination and their refusal to surrender. But this was something different. This was not warfare as he understood it. This was something older, something more primitive, something far more terrifying. This was hunting. And for the first time in his long military career, General Morthak realized that he was not the hunter. He was the prey. By the 7th day of occupation, General Morthak had lost over 4,000 soldiers, not from any large battle. There had been no great confrontation, no clash of armies, no heroic last stand. Instead, there had been 1,000 small cuts, each one bleeding his forces a little more. Supply convoys ambushed on remote roads. Officers killed in their sleep. Guard posts that went silent in the night and were found filled with bodies by morning. Fuel depots burning. Ammunition stores exploding. Communications constantly disrupted. 4,000 soldiers, dead or missing or deserted. And he had not killed a single one of the humans responsible. Morthak stood in his headquarters, staring at the tactical map that showed his deteriorating situation. Red markers indicated attacks over the past week. There were so many that parts of the map were almost completely covered. "We are losing control," said Colonel Drevak, his chief of staff. The colonel looked exhausted. None of them had slept properly in days. "The forward positions are running out of supplies. We lost another convoy last night. 30 vehicles, 200 soldiers, gone." "How?" Morthak demanded. "How did they destroy an entire convoy? They have no heavy weapons. They have no vehicles. They have nothing but what they carried on that small ship." "We do not know, sir. The few survivors we found were traumatized. They spoke of shadows that moved too fast to see, of enemies that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly." One soldier kept repeating that the humans were not human at all, that they were spirits of some kind. Morthak wanted to dismiss this as superstition, but he understood why his soldiers felt this way. 1,800 to 1 odds, and the 24 humans were winning. Meanwhile, deep in the mountain forests, Captain Shin Tae-woo was meeting with Governor Baek Sun-hee for the first time. She had taken an enormous risk to leave Bunker 7 and travel through the tunnel network to this meeting point. But she needed to see these human soldiers with her own eyes. She needed to understand what was happening. The cave was small and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling. A single chemical light provided dim illumination. Tae-woo and 3 of his operators sat on one side. Baek and 2 of her resistance leaders sat on the other. 24 soldiers. Baek said, shaking her head slowly. "You are telling me that Earth sent 24 soldiers to liberate an occupied planet?" "No, ma'am," Tae-woo replied. His voice was calm and professional. "Earth sent 24 soldiers to prepare the battlefield. Liberation comes later. Prepare it for what? For the main force. The relief fleet is 14 days out. 14 combat vessels. 8,000 regular army soldiers. They will retake the planet." He paused. "Our job is to ensure there is something left to save when they arrive, and to ensure the enemy is in no condition to resist." Baek studied him carefully. He was not what she had expected. He was quiet, almost soft-spoken. His face was calm, his movements controlled. There was nothing obviously dangerous about him, but his eyes told a different story. Behind that calm surface was something hard and sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. "What do you need from us?" she asked. "Information, mostly. Your people know this planet. They know where the enemy is strong and where they are weak. They know the hidden paths, the secret tunnels, the places where we can move unseen. We can provide that." "Good. We also need your people to continue their resistance activities. Sabotage. Disruption. Making the enemy uncomfortable. Every time a Varric soldier looks over his shoulder, it helps us." One of Baek's resistance leaders, a former army sergeant named Choi Min-soo, leaned forward. "Can your team actually defeat 40,000 soldiers?" Even with our help? Taewoo smiled slightly. We do not need to defeat them. We need to break them. There is a difference. Explain. An army is not just soldiers and weapons. It is also morale, communication, supply, leadership. Take away any of those things, and the army stops functioning. We cannot fight 40,000 soldiers in open battle, but we can make their officers afraid to give orders. We can make their supply lines unreliable. We can make every soldier feel alone and hunted. Eventually, the army does not need to be defeated. It defeats itself. Baek considered this. It made a terrible kind of sense. Your methods, she said carefully. They are effective, but they are also cruel. Some might say they go beyond what is acceptable in war. Taewoo's expression did not change. Governor, the Varric invaded your world without warning. They killed Colonel Ryu and hundreds of your soldiers. They planned to use your planet as a demonstration that humans can be conquered. He paused. We did not choose to fight this way, but we will fight however we must, to protect our people. There was silence in the cave for a long moment. Then Baek nodded slowly. Tell us exactly what you need. We will provide it. Over the following days, the coordination between special forces and civilian resistance became seamless. Intelligence flowed constantly from thousands of hidden observers. Every Varric movement was tracked and reported. Every weakness was identified and exploited. Day 8 brought a new level of psychological warfare. At exactly midnight, every radio in every Varric position received the same message. It was a recording in perfect Varric language. You are being watched. You are being hunted. Your officers cannot protect you. Your weapons cannot save you. We know where you eat. We know where you sleep. We know everything. The message repeated 3 times, then ended. Panic spread through the occupation force like fire. Soldiers demanded transfers to other units. Officers demanded additional guards. Some positions simply abandoned their posts and fled toward what they hoped was safety. Day 9 brought something even worse. General Morthak received a report that 17 of his officers had been killed during the night. Not in any single attack, but in 17 separate incidents across all 3 occupied cities. Some were shot, some were stabbed, some were strangled. All of them had been alone, even for just a moment. 2 of them had been battalion commanders. Their deaths created chaos in the command structure. Units lost coordination. Orders were delayed or lost entirely. And with the officers gone, the enlisted soldiers became even more frightened. If their leaders could be killed so easily, what chance did ordinary soldiers have? Day 10 brought the complete collapse of Varric logistics. Sergeant First Class Kim Mireille and her squad had spent 3 days mapping the enemy supply network. Every depot, every convoy route, every fuel station. They shared this information with the civilian resistance, and then they coordinated the most ambitious operation of the campaign. At exactly 0400, 23 separate targets were hit simultaneously. Fuel depots burned, food stores were contaminated, vehicle repair facilities exploded, communication relays were destroyed. Ammunition dumps erupted in spectacular fireballs that could be seen for kilometers. When the sun rose, the Varric occupation force had lost 80% of its supplies. General Morthak received the reports with something approaching despair. We cannot sustain operations, Colonel Drevak said quietly. Our soldiers are hungry. Our vehicles are out of fuel. Our communications are unreliable. And we are still losing personnel every hour to these attacks. Reinforcements, Morthak said. We need reinforcements from the fleet. Quote, Sir, the fleet commanders are reluctant to send additional troops. They fear the same tactics will be used against reinforcements. Some are even suggesting withdrawal. Morthak slammed his hand against his desk. We cannot withdraw. If we leave now, it shows the entire galaxy that humans can defeat us. Everything we have sacrificed will be for nothing. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. His occupation was failing. His soldiers were broken. His officers were terrified. On day 12, he received the message that finally destroyed his spirit. It was waiting on his personal data terminal when he woke up. Somehow, during the night, someone had entered his secured headquarters, walked past 4 layers of guards, and accessed his private computer. The message was simple. We know where you sleep. Today we chose not to visit. Tomorrow is uncertain. Leave. Below the words was a single symbol. The insignia of Earth's Special Operations Command. Morthak stared at the screen for a long time. His hands were shaking. His breath was coming fast and shallow. They had been in his room. While he slept, they could have killed him at any moment. They had chosen not to. This was not warfare. This was absolute, total dominance. They were showing him that his life continued only because they allowed it. He called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. Begin withdrawal preparations, he ordered. His voice was hollow. We will evacuate all forces within 48 hours. Colonel Dravak stared at him. Sir? Are you certain? I am certain, Morthak said quietly. We came here to prove that humans could be defeated. Instead, we have proven the opposite. We have shown the galaxy that even when outnumbered nearly 2,000 to 1, humans can prevail. He looked out the window at the occupied city below. Somewhere out there, 24 humans were watching, waiting, preparing for their next move. We were not defeated by their regular army, Morthak continued. We were defeated by something else. Something worse. Something that does not fight battles as we understand them. These special forces, they do not seek victory through combat. They seek victory through fear. He turned back to his officers, and they have succeeded. In the mountains above the city, Captain Shin Tae-woo lowered his binoculars. He had watched the Varric headquarters for hours, reading the body language of the officers moving in and out. He could see the despair in their movements, the defeat in their posture. Sir, reported Staff Sergeant Yoon Ji-soo through the radio. Intercepted communications suggest the enemy is preparing to withdraw. Tae-woo nodded slowly. Good. Maintain pressure. Do not let them relax until the last ship leaves orbit. Understood, sir. Also, Governor Baek wants to know if the relief fleet should be informed. Yes. Tell them the situation is stabilizing. When they arrive, they will find a broken enemy and a liberated population. He put down his binoculars and looked at the sky. Somewhere up there, 14 warships were coming. 8,000 soldiers ready to fight for their people. But the real fighting was already over. 24 soldiers, 16 days, 1 victory. This was what Special Forces did. Not through superior numbers or firepower. Through skill. Through determination. Through the willingness to do whatever was necessary. And through the simple understanding that sometimes, the greatest weapon is not a gun or a bomb. Sometimes, the greatest weapon is fear itself. The United Nations Relief Fleet arrived on day 16. 14 combat vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Busan system, weapons powered and ready for battle. 8,000 regular army soldiers prepared for what they expected to be a long and bloody campaign to retake the occupied planet. Admiral Kang So-yeon stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UNS Indomitable, watching the tactical displays fill with information about the situation below. Admiral, reported her intelligence officer, we are detecting mass evacuation activity in the Varric occupation zone. All 3 cities show transport vessels moving toward orbit. So-yeon frowned. This was not what she had expected. They are withdrawing? Already? It appears so, ma'am. The last Varric ground forces are loading onto transports now. Their fleet is moving toward the jump point. The Admiral exchanged confused looks with her staff. They had prepared for weeks of fighting. They had expected heavy casualties. Instead, they were arriving to find the enemy already leaving. Contact the surface, So-yeon ordered. I want to speak with whoever is in command down there. A few minutes later, a tired but triumphant voice came through the speakers. This is Captain Shin Tae-woo of Earth Special Operations Command. Welcome to New Busan, Admiral. Captain, what is the situation? The enemy is in full retreat, ma'am. They have been conducting withdrawal operations for the past 48 hours. We estimate less than 5,000 Varric soldiers remain on the surface, and all of them are moving toward evacuation points. Soyun shook her head slowly. Captain, we were told the occupation force numbered 40,000. Are you saying they have all been killed? On how to? Negative, ma'am. Approximately 4,000 enemy casualties over the 16-day operation. The rest are simply leaving. Their morale has completely collapsed. They no longer believe they can hold this planet. There was a long silence on the bridge. 4,000 casualties, against an initial force of 40,000. That meant over 30,000 Varric soldiers were retreating without a fight. Captain, Soyun said carefully, how many operators do you have on the surface? 24, ma'am. The Admiral closed her eyes for a moment. 24 against 40,000. And they had won. Captain Shin, I want a full briefing when we land. For now, can you confirm that the civilian population is safe? Confirmed, ma'am. Governor Baek Sun-hee coordinated civilian protection throughout the occupation. Approximately 2 million civilians survived in the underground bunker network. Some casualties, but far fewer than we feared. Good work, Captain. Very good work. On the surface of New Busan, Captain Shin Tae-woo ended the communication and turned to look at his team. They were gathered in a small clearing, watching the last Varric transport ships rising toward orbit. 24 exhausted, dirty soldiers who had not slept properly in over 2 weeks. They had won. Sergeant First Class Kim Murray walked over to stand beside him. The Admiral sounded surprised, she observed. People usually are, Tae-woo replied. They hear about our work, but they do not really understand it until they see the results. Will they understand now? Perhaps. Or perhaps they will think we got lucky. It does not matter. We know what we did here. The people we saved know what we did. That is enough. Governor Baek Sun-hee emerged from a nearby tunnel entrance, accompanied by several of her resistance leaders. She walked toward the Special Forces team with an expression of profound gratitude. Captain Shin, she said, extending her hand. I do not know how to thank you. When your team arrived, I thought we were finished. I thought liberation was impossible. Tae-woo shook her hand. Ma'am, your people saved themselves. We just gave them the tools and the opportunity. That is generous, but not entirely accurate. Baek looked at the 24 operators standing before her. You did something remarkable here. Something that will be remembered for a long time. In orbit, General Morthak stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching New Busan grow smaller in the view screen. His flagship was leading the retreat, but there was no honor in it. Only survival. His aide approached carefully. General, High Command wants a full report. They want to understand how we lost the planet. Morthak was quiet for a long moment. Tell them we did not lose it, he finally said. We surrendered it, voluntarily, because continuing to hold it was impossible. They will want details, sir. Then give them details. Morthak turned to face his aide directly. Tell them we faced an enemy unlike anything in our experience. Not their regular army. Not their famous soldiers who refused to surrender. Something else. Something far more dangerous. He walked to his personal terminal and began typing his official report. It would be classified at the highest levels, but eventually, it would leak out. It always did, and when it did, the entire galaxy would learn what happened on New Busan. The report read, in part, these special forces are not soldiers in any sense we understand. They are something else, something worse. They do not fight battles. They fight wars of the mind, wars against the spirit itself. Our troops did not fear death at their hands. They feared the uncertainty, the helplessness, the constant knowledge that they were prey and not predator. I recommend that the Dominion reconsider any future military action against human-held territories. Their conventional forces are dangerous. Their special operations forces are something beyond danger. They are inevitability. Back on New Busan, the relief fleet had landed. Thousands of regular army soldiers were deploying across the planet, securing areas that the Varric had abandoned. Medical teams were tending to the wounded. Engineers were beginning to repair damaged infrastructure. Captain Shin Tae-woo and his team stood apart from the activity, preparing for extraction. Their mission was over. Soon they would be on a ship heading back to Earth, where they would rest, recover, and wait for the next impossible task. Governor Bake approached one final time. She looked at the 24 operators and shook her head slowly. "How?" she asked. "How is any of this possible? 24 people against an army. It should not be possible." Taewoo considered the question carefully. Around him, his operators were packing their equipment, checking their weapons, going through the familiar routines that had kept them alive for 16 days of constant danger. "Humans have been fighting each other for a very long time," he said finally. "We got very good at it. We learned how to survive when outnumbered. We learned how to win when victory seemed impossible. We learned how to turn weakness into strength." He paused, watching a Varric transport ship disappear into the clouds above, fleeing toward space. "And when we stopped fighting each other, we did not forget those lessons. We just started applying them differently." "That does not fully explain it," Bake pressed. Taewoo turned to face her. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. "Ma'am." The Varric thought they understood what humanity was capable of. They had seen our armies, our fleets, our conventional forces. They measured our strength in numbers and firepower and logistics. He picked up his pack and slung it over his shoulder. "They never considered that our real weapon was something else entirely." "And what is that?" Taewoo smiled slightly. "Persistence, creativity, adaptability, and the absolute refusal to accept that any situation is hopeless." He glanced back at his team, then returned his attention to the governor. "Also, we are really good at making other people very uncomfortable." Bake laughed. It was the first genuine laugh she had managed in weeks. In the Galactic Union archives, far across the galaxy, a new entry was being added to humanity's file. Intelligence officers from a dozen species studied the reports from New Busan, trying to understand what had happened. The file grew larger every day. Tactical analyses, psychological profiles, strategic assessments. Every piece of information they could gather about Earth's military capabilities. But at the very beginning of the file, before all the detailed analysis, was a single recommendation. It was highlighted in urgent red, the color reserved for existential threats. Under no circumstances engage human special operations forces. If engaged, withdraw immediately. If withdrawal is impossible, surrender. There is no third option. The recommendation would be read by military commanders across the galaxy. Some would believe it. Some would dismiss it as exaggeration. Some would think that their species could do better than the Varric had done. A few of them would eventually test that theory. They would all learn the same lesson that General Morthak had learned on New Busan. Humans were dangerous. Their regular armies were frightening. Their determination and refusal to surrender were legendary. But their special forces were something else entirely. They were the whisper in the darkness. The shadow that moved too fast to see. The enemy that appeared from nowhere and vanished without a trace. They were every alien commander's worst nightmare, and they were very good at their job. On the transport ship heading back to Earth, Captain Shin Taewoo sat in the cargo bay with his team. They were all sleeping, finally allowing themselves to rest after 16 days of constant tension. Taewoo alone remained awake, looking out a small window at the stars passing by. Somewhere out there, other planets were under threat. Other people needed protection. Other impossible missions waited to be accomplished. He closed his eyes and let himself rest. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges, new enemies, new odds to overcome. But for now, for this moment, he allowed himself to feel satisfied. 24 soldiers, 40,000 enemies, 1 victory. That was what special forces did, and they would keep doing it, as long as there were people who needed saving. Because that was what humans did best. They survived, they adapted, they overcame, and they never, ever gave up.